Whenever I'm working with a single guy on creating an international tax strategy, creating an international lifestyle that fuels those tax savings, one thing I always want to talk about, at least on some level, is how important is dating, is meeting people, is potentially marriage or longer term relationships as part of your plan. I think that most accountants and lawyers skip over that. But if you're single, it's important. You want to meet people, you want to date. And so one question that I have been asked by people that I'm working with is, where are the hidden gems of dating for men around the world? I'm going to share 4 with you that are worth considering. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson. Here at Nomad Capitalist, we help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally go where you're treated best. You can learn more at nomadcapitalist.com. This is always a little bit of a sensitive topic because, certainly there are many different ways to approach this if you're living overseas. Anything from I want to go and find a lovely woman to become my wife to I'd like to meet somebody new every weekend. There's no judgment from me, and I'm going to talk about where you can meet people that I think are open to meeting you, that in places where you might not have considered before. And so a lot of people like to go to Southeast Asia. One of the least visited cities in Southeast Asia, which I think is a great place to meet people, is Jakarta, Indonesia. I spend a lot of my time these days in Kuala Lumpur. I love Malaysia. One thing I can tell you about Malaysia is if you are single, I know so many single people from all around the world in the expat community who complain about the dating scene. It is a bit more difficult. And you've got this kind of weird vibe where Malaysia is a pretty developed country by global standards. And so you've got the people that you're going to run into who may be a bit more worldly. They're not maybe as open to meeting people. And there's just a number of roadblocks for a single person to dating in Kuala Lumpur. It's certainly possible. I know people who are dating. It's just kind of a thing that people kvetch about in KL. Jakarta, on the other hand, you have a relatively similar culture of very nice, very sweet people who are much more open, I think, to meeting people for dating, for relationships, somewhat because they're in this huge country of 250 million people. And while people go to Bali, for example, or they go to Lombok, people really aren't going to Jakarta. It's chaotic. The traffic is insane. I remember one time it took me close to 3 hours to drive 8 kilometers during the middle of the day. And so you really have to plan things out. But because of that chaos, because it's much more of a business city, I think you'll find people much more open to meeting you. And it's probably a hidden gem in Asia. Now in Europe, there are a couple cities that stand out. Certainly we've talked about a lot of different places in Europe. For me, one thing I like about Eastern Europe is you've got people, here in Belgrade, for example, where I am now, you go around, there's so many bookstores. People read. And when I tell people that, they say, oh, you should have seen it 10 years ago. There are even more bookstores. And so you have an educated, I think, mature culture that is attractive to a lot of people. The challenge in a lot of Southeastern Europe is you've got countries where people largely date within their own culture because I think they find each other pretty attractive and it's just not as much of a thing. But if you go up to, let's say, city number 2, Moscow, you've got one of the most beautiful cities in the world. You've got a place that anyone who I've talked to who's been there says, this really is a hidden gem. Whether you're single, whether you're married, it's a great place to go and spend some time. And I think from a dating perspective, you've got a city that's busy, and you have kind of that big city hustle without maybe that New York or LA or Sydney kind of nonsense that you might find if you're coming from one of those places. And so you've got people who are open to meeting foreigners. Now, if you're looking at people in Malaysia or Indonesia being really nice and being sweet, certainly in a lot of places in Eastern Europe, especially in Northeastern Europe, it's not going to be quite as much of a back rub, culturally speaking. But you have people who are open. And if you can traverse that culture, if you can learn how to deal with that, you've got people who I think are very open to meeting, particularly as you have this kind of cultural idea in a country like Russia where historically there were fewer men than women, and so women want to meet people. And a lot of Russian women I've met around the world have complained that far more so than women from other countries that I meet people from, that they do more than their share of the work. And so even since I was a child and my mother went to Russia, I have 3 adopted siblings from Russia. And she would go over and she would, talk to some of the women who worked there, and they'd say, we work, we've got a job, we live in tiny apartments, we come home, we cook, we clean, we do everything, and the guy just kind of, hangs out. Whether that's true or not, I've worked with some Russian people who are very successful, and so that may be a stereotype, but, if you go out into, society, you can find, certainly, I think, very attractive people who are open and interested in meeting. And I would say the third city then would be next door in Minsk, Belarus, a place that, everyone knows Moscow, even if they haven't been there, even if it's harder to get a visa for many people to go there. Belarus has dramatically opened up, and it's actually been a very crypto-friendly country for some of our crypto watchers. Certainly, these two countries have their own issues, as any country does. But Belarus is, I think, a country that most people are not going to. They have this Western kind of e-visa, visa on arrival program, which has been expanded to more countries. Most people now can go to Belarus for, I think, generally 30 days without a visa. And so, if you buy a property there, if you put some money in the bank, potentially you can get a residence permit. Russia has its own options to do that. But definitely two places that have that Eastern European vibe. People are more open, and I think should be looked at, because a lot of people aren't going there. And lastly, in Latin America, one place where I actually spend some time is Bogota. And people know about Colombia. That's not particularly a hidden gem. But what I think is the hidden gem about Bogota is a lot of people who are going down there, a lot of people who are perhaps looking for more casual dating, are going to places like Medellin. And they're overlooking what they call it's the eternal fall, it's boring, it's gray, it's Bogota. I happen to like Bogota. I like business cities. I like action. I think there's actually some beautiful things about Bogota. And I've been to Medellin, I've been all over Colombia, but for me, it's easier, in my opinion, to meet people that you would want to talk to, meet people that you'd want to spend time with. I don't, find it to be some place where, people are standoffish. I find people to be very welcoming there. Now, the challenge, that I think I've talked about a little bit before is in Latin America, the challenge if you're living a nomadic lifestyle is if you want a longer-term relationship, it's probably more difficult than for someone who's perhaps from Moscow or from Minsk or from something like that, where there's a great affinity with many people in a place like Colombia to stay there and to be with family, not to be moving around. So that's something that you want to consider. But a lot of people skip over Bogota because they're following the herd to other places. And I think if you can go where others are not going, do what others won't, so that you can get what others don't get. That applies to anything in life as it does here. So those are 4 cities that I think are worth checking out if you are looking to meet people. If you have one that you think I missed, leave a comment below. How can Nomad Capitalist help you? 4 ways. Number 1, subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to make sure you get our new video every day. Number 2, get a copy of Nomad Capitalist, the book. You'll learn a lot of my personal experiences over a dozen years of studying this stuff, as well as exactly some of the strategies that you can use to build your Nomad Capitalist plan. Number 3, if you're not sure where to start, but you want to come and learn from my team and I, you want to come and mingle with like-minded people, learn more about our live conference, Nomad Capitalist Live. It's coming up soon. And number 4, if you want some help right now because you've got a burning issue, you need something solved, you want to lower your taxes, get a second passport, or build the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle of your dreams, go to nomadcapitalist.com and click on Become a Client.